it is my pleasure to host and to run us through our agenda this morning. Several of you might notice I'm looking at the door. I just want to make sure that as the guest of honor walks in, I am able to let you know so we can all stand and let him receive his applause as he walks in. So do not worry about what I'm doing. I'll keep looking at the door, but also engaging with you. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest of honor this morning, as many of you might be aware, was to be the Prime Minister of the United Republic of Tanzania, Honorable Mwigulu Nchemba. However, due to pressing issues this morning, he was unable to make it, but he sends his greetings. He sends his greeting representing, of course, representing the government. Ladies and gentlemen, like I have announced, we're going to have Honorable Martin Wilbert Kolikoli, the Capital Market and Securities Tribunal. He's a registrar, and he will be our guest of honor this morning. Otherwise, we also have special guests joining us this morning, special guests who have come from far and wide to engage in this conversation. And even before the guest of honor comes in, I'm going to ask you to give our special guests a hand of applause. The special guest is the person sitting next to you. Naomba utampigia makofi. Huyu pia ni mgeni rasmi. Usishangae. The person sitting next to you is a very special guest this morning. You know, tell them thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. You made it very early. This is where you tell them. I told you by the end of this session, you'll have connected. Yes. But of course, we have with us representatives from government, private sector, across civil society. We have academia. We have people across several different fields coming together to discuss, to unlearn, to get inspired, to connect around the theme for this International Women's Day in 2026, rights, justice, action for all women and girls. Rights, justice, action for all women and girls. I'd like to also say at this point, as long as you're in this room, should you have any issues with your photos or video being taken, please do let us know. You will literally, I am going to ask, I am looking for Mr. Wilfred Mwakabala. I'm going to ask the gentleman at the back with the white shirt, please put your hand up. If you have a problem with consent, having your a problem with having your photo taken and you don't want to give that consent, please let that gentleman know, or you can also let me know. But as long as you are in here, we will be taking photos, we will be taking videos, and they will be used only for the purposes within what we are connected here for. So again, in case you have any issues, please do let us know. We want to respect your rights. We want to respect your privacy, yes? Okay. Lakini sasa if you don't want to give me consent because you're doing things, this is where you repent. But jokes aside, okay, ladies and gentlemen, our guest of honor is about to walk in and I'm going to count us down. I don't want to get you to stand up and ask you to sit again. Ladies and gentlemen, tafadhali tusimame kwa pamoja. Let's all rise to our feet. Let's all rise to our feet. A hand of applause, mabibi na mabwana. Honorable Martin Wilbert Kolikoli, our guest of honor this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, he's escorted by the CEO of the Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange. Along with them is Ms. Martine Valsine, Country Manager for Tanzania, Rwanda, and Uganda at the International Finance Corporation. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Shabnam Malik, Head of UN Resident Coordinator's Office. Let's give them a hand of applause as they walk in. Asante sana. Also, ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Catherine Gifford, UN Women Acting Country Representative. Ladies and gentlemen, also with them, Executive Director of the United Nations Global Compact Network, Tanzania, Ms. Marsha Makata Yambi. Mabibi na mabwana, asanteni sana. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, also walked in Miss Angelique Pesha, CEO Mixed Bias, Miss Susan Dombandaran, CEO Ate. Ladies and gentlemen, you can have your seats. Karibuni sana. Makofi tena, mabibi na mabwana. I'd like to now bring it back to business. This is where our conversation begins this morning. We're going to start with a powerful fireside chat. From rights to results, a conversation with leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, because the conversation today is not just about the commitments you make, it's not about intention, it's about action. Mabibi na mabwana, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to bring up to the stage our panelists, our five-star panelists for this morning. And we're going to again be discussing beyond intention, beyond declarations, beyond all that, but we're going to be discussing how we move into results. Mabibi na mabwana, first and foremost to the stage, a hand of applause. International Finance Corporation Country Director, Miss Martine Valsine. A hand of applause, Mabibi na mabwana. This is not where you reflect. You've stopped reflecting, you're clapping. Ladies and gentlemen, also to the stage, Mr. Peter Nalitolela, CEO, Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange. The capital, he for she, himself. Mabibi na mabwana, also to the stage, Executive Director, Global Compact Network Tanzania, Miss Marsha Makatayambi. Makofi kwake, mabibi na mabwana. And as I said at the offset, I'm going to ask you to also give yourselves a round of applause because as we're discussing, you're also taking part. So you're also a pseudo panelist. You begin, Makofi. Oh, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, like I said, the conversation this morning, we have started with deep reflection, but we are going to go into learning and learning, into getting inspired, looking at what is being done in different spaces. So please do get ready to get engaged, be ready to ask questions, and in every single way be part of the conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, for this panel discussion, I am going to go directly and start with you, Ms. Valsine. Yes? Let's see if your mic works. Hello? Oh, let's just press that. Jamani, makofi kwa teknolojia.
Hello.
Hey. Wonderful. So I'd like to begin with you. For IFC, advancing rights and justice for women and girls is not simply a social commitment. It's an investment strategy. You have shown that, we have seen that, and truly your work speaks that. So I'd like to ask, what does right, justice, action for all women and girls look like in practice when it comes to IFC's approach to job creation and private sector development? Karibu sana.
Asante sana. Thank you, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here today to participate on this panel, on this conversation from rights to results, and also explaining or providing some examples about how IFC is helping transform rights, justice, and action for women and girls into tangible outcomes. So our mission is very simple yet powerful. Putting women at the center of private sector development is not only the right thing to do, it's a smart thing to do. When women succeed, economies flourish, societies grow stronger, and opportunity multiply for everyone. So over the next 10 to 15 years, 1.2 billion young people will enter the workforce. The private sector must create at least 90% of the jobs that are needed. However, too often, women and girls are left behind, held back by skills gap, unsafe work environment, lack of childcare, and restricted access to finance and pay disparities. So advancing rights for us means removing barriers to opportunities. Ensuring women's access to quality job is about more than fairness. It's about dignity, purpose, and unleashing a powerful engine of growth. At AFC, we're committed to ensuring every woman has the right to participate fully in the economy, whether as an employer, an employee, or an entrepreneur. In Tanzania and across Africa, women faces barriers to finance, markets, leadership, and equal pay. That's why our partnership with the Association of Tanzania Employers and the Zanzibar Chamber of Commerce through the Ajisawa Initiative is so important. Together, we are encouraging companies to modernize recruitment, launch mentorship programs, and invest in women's career development, making equal opportunity a reality. And when we talk about justice, Justice at work means more than having a job. It means to have a good job. It's about fair pay, safe working conditions, and equal chances to lead. In Tanzania's financial sector, our Finance to Equal Tanzania initiative is closing gender gaps through leadership training, mentorship, and measurable diversity targets. At project completion, women in middle management in participating companies rose from 41 to 50%, and women in senior management from 27 to 31%. We also partner with stock exchanges to strengthen listing rules and corporate governance practices to introduce disclosure rules on gender diversity, promoting targets, transparent reporting, and board skills matrices to increase women's representation in senior leadership and on corporate boards on listed companies. By partnering with the Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange, we encourage companies to disclose gender composition and set diversity goals. Women currently hold 22% of board seats in Tanzanian listed companies. There are only 3 female CEOs and 1 female board chair among those companies. That said, it's ironic because companies with greater diversity on executive teams are 39% more likely to outperform peers who do not. By shedding light on the statistics, we are increasing accountability, which can drive real change. And what does action mean? It means driving solutions that can make a real difference by mobilizing capital at scale for impact. In Tanzania, only 15% of women have access to commercial banking, often due to a lack of collateral, for example, not being able to own land or title, or not being financially literate. So one of the solutions, there are many solutions that we've put forward in the market for this, and I will provide 3 examples. The first one is developing financial products specifically tailored for women. To IFC's Banking on Women program, we help banks deliver tailored products, financing, and advice. Since 2012, this program has mobilized over $12.5 billion for women-owned businesses across the world, across 86 countries. Millions of loans have been changing lives. Another example is leveraging capital markets. In 2022, IFC invested in Sub-Saharan Africa's first gender bond issued by our client, NMB Bank. It was $32 million. That was oversubscribed by nearly 200%, and this bond empowered more than 3,200 women-owned businesses to grow, create jobs, and strengthen the economy. Our partnership with MasterCard and NMB is also expanding a range of innovative services for women entrepreneurs. The fact that this bond was oversubscribed is also testimony of the broader community here in Tanzania that there's a belief that women can succeed and about women's potential as economic engines. And the third example I wanted to provide was harnessing data and partnership. The Women Entrepreneur Finance Code that we call We Finance Code was launched in 2023. It's already in place in more than 250 financial institutions in 30 countries. In Tanzania, it was adopted last year, about a year ago. And in partnership with the African Development Bank, we are building coalitions, gathering gender disaggregated data, and driving new products for women-led businesses. Worldwide, the We Finance Code has supported nearly 400,000 women entrepreneurs, unlocking more than $5.3 billion in financing. So in conclusion, I would like to leave you with this thought. What we need to do is to invest intentionally, hire inclusively, and grow sustainably. Advancing rights, justice, and action for women and girls is more than just a moral imperative. It's the key to resilient economies and shared prosperity. Let's ensure that every woman has the tools, opportunities, and voice to shape her own future, and together let's shape a stronger future for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, a hand of applause. There's so much that you shared in there, and congratulations to all the work that's been done. I think the things that just top of mind, intentionality, that it has to be driven in intentionality. It can't just be speak. It has to be driven with practical activities on ground. But then you also speak of partnerships. And one of the partnerships that you did mention is the one that you have with the Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange. Ladies and gentlemen, makofi kwa ODSC. Kwa kweli wamefanya na wanafanya kazi kubwa, na of course this brings me directly to you, Mr. Nalitolela. Of course, what we've heard is that access to opportunity is often shaped by where capital flows. So now we move to the money. I'd like to know, how are you using that influence that you have to push capital through gender bonds, social impact instruments, or ESG frameworks? How are you using your influence to push capital towards businesses and initiatives that serve women who are hardest to reach? We heard 15% actually have access to accounts, yes? How are you using that to reach women who are hardest to reach? And how do you measure whether the capital is actually translating to justice on ground?
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So before I get to your question, Khalil, I just want to touch on one key statistics that we have on the stock exchange. I was just looking at the number of CDS accounts that we have on the stock exchange. And as at the end of the day yesterday, we had 799,172 accounts. So almost 800,000, almost getting there. Now, if you look at the breakdown gender-wise, only 283,897 are identified as accounts held by females. Now, I would say that there's 84,758 accounts that are not mapped. This is because before we started using technology more, some of the early accounts that were open, you had incomplete data. But even if you had to add this still and assume all of these were females, the percentage is still very small. In comparison, those that are male-owned accounts are 430,712. So more than 51.552%, I would say. So this is there's a very big imbalance, and if I strictly stick to those that we know for sure are female held accounts 2, 8, 3, 8, and 7, it's only 35.5%. So it shows you that despite the efforts that the exchange has been driving, our partners like IFC, UN Global Compact, working with the regulator, the government, there's still a very big imbalance coming from the investor side, coming from the supply side of capital. And there's a lot more that we need to do to sensitize this. And the reason why I started with this angle is that it's a collaborative effort when it comes now to the demand side, the businesses that need capital. So it doesn't mean that only female investors should finance female businesses. But it goes without saying that if we had a lot more female investors, there will be a lot more imperative to have more female led businesses financed, because basically you're investing in your own, so to speak. And this leads me to my first point. Why, in terms of the influence that we can have as DSC, on the first part is encouraging more female participation, have more female individual operator accounts, work more with initiatives such as the UN Women, UN Global Compact, and other various groups to increase investor participation from that angle. We have been making deliberate efforts to work with a number of investment clubs, groups that are women only, to speak to them about the stock exchange, trying to get them to participate more. And looking at our audience, I see a former classmate, Advocate Sarah Sondi, who actually very recently working with some of our classmates from University of Dar es Salaam School of Law, LLB 2006. They had a session where they invited us to speak to them, and we do a lot more of this to try to encourage participation for female investors. Now, coming back to the actual deployment of funds from gender bonds and so on, so to speak, we still are very reliant on disclosures from the issuers. As an exchange, we currently do not necessarily have the capacity to go down to the ground to see whether the capital is being channeled to the right use of sources, but we rely on the issuers and, of course, the independent reviewers that have the responsibility of making sure that they stay true to what they promised the investors when they came to issue the bonds. As Martin has said, we do work together across board in terms of listed companies and issues with other listed securities in the exchange to make sure that we hold them more accountable when it comes to disclosures. Being in a young market, at the initial stages, you usually want to be a bit soft and you don't go very hard if people don't meet up to their disclosure expectations. But as if we're going to move a dial, really, then we have to get a bit tougher and really go down to the ground and see that is what you promised really transpiring in terms of what is expected. Are you playing that transformative role that you promised us? This speaks to the question that you asked me specifically on the channeling of capital, but looking at the wider financial inclusion perspective, some of the statistics that Martin mentioned are quite alarming. 22% board participation in listed companies by women is still on the low side. So we also need to work with these companies to get more females participate, take part in some of the initiatives that are driven by various organizations to equip potential board, potential CEOs, women, to get them to be board ready, to be CEO ready, so that when they take up those positions, then they can play an influencing role within the organization to make sure the capital goes towards supporting women and girls, and we can meet up to our theme for this year, Justice for All Women and Girls. For now, I would want to end there and then pass the mic back to you, Kela.
Thank you very much. A hand of applause, Mabibi na Mabwana. You said some very pertinent things there, but I just want to take a moment and throw it to the audience. You don't need to raise your hand. It's just a point of reflection to all the women in here. Have you opened an account with the Dar es Salaam Stock Exchange? Are you investing? Right? This is a question directly to you. You don't have to tell your neighbor. It's not confession time, but are you investing? Do you understand what it means for a woman to hold that power, right? And then if you are the people that surround you, your circle of influence, the people that you're stewarding, do they know about what you know? If they don't, then it is your imperative on some of your action points to make sure that they do. So we are ambassadors. So I'm expecting that even tukitoka hapa, Mr. Nalitolela will have more on that percentage, yes? That is something that we're taking. Tujipigie makofi, manake ndo ambassadors humu ndani. And also to all the influencers, the ladies running the clubs who are in the audience, congratulations, makofi kwenu pia, mnafanya kazi kubwa sana. Thank you so much, Mr. Nalitolela. What we're hearing is that markets can shape incentives, but real progress ultimately happens inside companies themselves, for the people to be able to disclose that they're actually meeting up to their commitments. And this is where leadership within the private sector becomes critical. Ms. Marsha Makata Yambi. The Global Compact Network's 10 principles and women's empowerment principles provide a very clear roadmap for businesses to advance gender equality in the workplace, in the marketplace, in the wider community. I'd like to know, from what you are seeing, or as a convener of Tanzania's business community, how are you moving member companies from simply signing to the principles to genuinely embedding women's rights into their core business practices?
Thank you very much, Khalila, for this interesting question. But before I step onto it, I would like to take this opportunity to greet you all. Good morning, habarini za asubuhi, but also to say thank you so much for creating time to be here in this important conversation. At the Global Compact, what I see that this is we do it intentionally. It's a very intentional move, and we do it with passion. And one has to understand is within the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact, we have the first and the second principle tied to the human rights. And this is one of the pillars. But again, the third to sixth principle, we are talking about the labor. And these are very intentional and have been embedded, and we see that within the auspices of the WEPs, the Women Empowerment Principles, we have practical roadmap that allows companies not only to just sign, but really to look into the ways that they have intentionality within their leadership and governance, but also campaigning through and ensuring that that workplace is creating equality And of course, within that, we say that those supply chains, so whoever like is inclined or supplies that particular partner who have signed in is also part of the journey. But also we see that within the communities, we are very intentional in ensuring that those elements are being done in a transparent and very ways of reporting. Because without reporting, then you'll see that you're leaving them. They just sign and they don't report. So from the signing to the systems, we have allowed them to see 3 phases. The first phase is all about commitment. So within the commitment phase, we see that the CEOs, they do the endorsement, they allow it to be done. So within yourselves, you see that we go further to make sure that you are listed in terms of accountability. So you are listed in the global platform. So we create visibility for you. But again, at the board level, we ensure that within yourselves, you get it to be sensitized. So it's not just about you as an entity, you sign in, but rather you make sure that it's all about the whole governance, okay? But again, we go now to the second phase, which is very critical, and of course, we see the lag behind saying that it's very time consuming. It is time consuming because it is intentional. And if you do not put it well in terms of implementation, you'll find that you'll be losing and missing some of the actors within your organization, and also those who are expecting now your report, you'll be missing the data, which is very important into that. So we guide companies, and we guide them in ensuring that they do assessment. We do have tools. They do gender assessment gaps. And once they do that, they develop also timeline or time-bound plans, action plans, either to close them or to mitigate the expansion of those gaps. And of course, we ensure that within your plans and activities and operations, you integrate that particular plan. So it's not like a standalone, but rather it is integrated within your operations and activities. And once that is done, we see that we push, or rather we plead for you to establish anti-harassment policies, but it's also grievance mechanism policies. And then once that is done, we fully support you to come up with equal pay audits. And this is where the sensitivity comes in, because one feels that maybe you are intentional into unveiling and knowing someone's 10-figure salary check and all that. But again, this is very intentional, because end of the day, there is no way we can say that we are working together with the gender equality if you employ a man and then you employ a woman, and then the two are doing the same works, same jobs, and they have graduated, like the way Nalitolela was talking about the classmate. It means like once they are together in that particular role, they'll be paid equally. And this is where the catch comes. So once those gender audit pay gaps, pay audits are conducted, that's when you unveil now, we as an organization, where do we want to go? How do we do it? How do we become intentional as well in terms of like closing such gaps? So this moves us, moves the gender equality from a corporate social responsibility to a core risk platform. And this is how you can manage yourself, because it will now appear among your risk areas. You'll be employing with that intentionality. You'll be closing the gaps of employment within the HR and the ones who are concerned with intentionality. And this is now taking you boldly and intentionally into measurement. This is the third phase. When you go to do now the measurements, all the companies are required, and what we say is like must. So are required not only to report annually through communication on progress, and we all know how those reports have always been a pain. Yeah, it has been a pain because you feel like it is just a report. No. It is your intentional way of showing everyone globally, not only in country, that you are incorporating such advancements not only to make yourself more profitable, but to make yourself more sustainable. And these are the elements that we see that people tend to feel that reports are for them. No. Reports are for yourselves. For yourselves that you want to grow further. You were here, you want to go to the next level. So if you don't have such elements called data, you'll lose it, you'll miss it. And you'll miss it big because you'll just plug in whatever comes in for them. It's not for them, it's for yourself. So we need also to be very intentional on these areas. But again, also to, within our data, we must also be very from the beginning, have sex desegregation. We must know which one is a female, which one is a male. And in Tanzania, this is very possible, right? Yes. And also, we need also to come up with like a sharing of the leadership representation. So it's not only within this, the lower levels, but also all the way to the board. And hearing that we do have only one female chairman, within the space, it means that it's either we are not communicating it well, or we are missing what we see as the market being flooded with. We have come up with, through the ATE, have come up with the Female Future Program, and this is all female being taken through proper modules to make them board savvy, board products, so that when you employ them, you do not have much of the ABCs to be oriented to. So in other words, we feel that the market has the products, but it is the men still closing the doors. They don't see us. They don't see us, and they make themselves continue to be with them, and they feel maybe tuna maneno mengi, lakini huwa tuna maneno mengi. But again, what I would want us to know is basically to know that within these intentionalities, we feel that when we report, so this is about now coming in now with the voluntary national review. So I was telling you about all the stages that you go through. But again, I feel that we need also to know that the reporting is not only of your organization, but collectively, as a country, we come up with a report, which now speaks, where are we as a country in terms of like, how have we been doing in terms of like all the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And this is where we can say that we will report, because the data coming from organizations are clean and not za kupika, and we need to do that very boldly, because the 2026 Voluntary National Review is here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.